All right. Well, thanks for being patient for technical difficulties. We had a quick turnaround and needed to set up all the recording stuff. So we're going to talk about content types, managed metadata, and you. This is part 2 from yesterday. Yesterday we focused a lot on content types themselves, understanding the concepts of content types. We barely touched on managed metadata. This time we're really going to dive into managed metadata a lot because that's going to play into what we're going to do. A little bit about me. I'm Lori Gowin. There's my contact information. I am a premier field engineer for Microsoft. That means that basically I do a lot of work with our enterprise level customers. I'm dedicated mostly to 3 customers and do a lot of work with them, proactive and reactive, supporting and helping plan their upgrades, assessments, anything like that that they need. I am in Birmingham, Alabama, so yes, I'm a Southerner by choice and by birth, I guess. And I run the user group there with Laura Rogers. Many of you may know about her. She's one of my best friends. And I also am the co-founder of Women in SharePoint. So we have discovered through many years of going to conferences that the SharePoint conferences, we had a lot more women by percentage attending and embracing that technology than a lot of other sectors. So we wanted to make sure that we had a way to contact each other and network and build that out. So you can always go look up Women in SharePoint and find us there. And then that's my contact information: blog, email, LinkedIn, Twitter. You can find me on most of those. I do request, if you want to LinkedIn connect with me, tell me you were in this session or you saw me here or something, because I get a lot of recruiters and people and anonymous, and I'm going, do I really know them? So just let me know where we met or you saw me here. Be glad to connect with you on there. Our agenda, we're going to talk a lot about managed metadata. So we're really going to dive into that, how we work with it technically. I won't go into the concepts of how you make your determinations of what needs to be managed metadata and what doesn't, but how you work with it, working with term sets, term stores. We're going to really talk about that. Then we're going to talk about using managed metadata in our libraries and how we can help our users using that. We will actually create a product catalog using cross-site publishing, and then another catalog type of content using search. So I'm going to try to cram a lot of this stuff into an hour and 10 minutes. This is usually an hour and 15-minute presentation. I'd really like to make it like an hour presentation because I have a flight to catch soon. So I'm going to try to cram it in. If I get to going too fast, just raise your hand up, ask me a question. I'll be glad to answer those, okay? All right, let's go. Let's start with managed metadata. We can talk about term store administration. So there's a lot of management options that exist at the global or at the site collection level. Typically, you have a hierarchy. If anybody went to Reuven's session, he talks a lot about taxonomy and how you figure things out. A lot of that goes into planning your hierarchy, planning your groups, your term sets, what terms are going to go into those, and how you're going to manage them. Out of the box, you do get some term sets with it. There's some people ones, and this is like your user profile details, maybe things like their job titles. Those automatically start populating in your managed metadata. You get your search dictionaries. These manage things that are like included or excluded companies, query spelling corrections. Anybody type something and mistype it and get that wonderful "did you mean?" So we can help our users with that if they consistently mistype something that they're searching for. And a lot of that you can find using those results that you get from search reports, where you can go into analytics and see what the top queries are, abandoned queries. A lot of times if they've misspelled something, it might end up being an abandoned query because they're not really finding what they're looking for. Or maybe queries with no results because it's typed wrong. So we can help manage those dictionaries. You also get hashtags and keywords, and these are where they're more free-form. Those are populated as people enter hashtags or keywords on items. And then you also have a library or a term store of orphaned terms. These are terms that have been used somewhere and deleted, so that we can go in and make sure that they were meant to be deleted, or update those, or maybe change them from orphan to retired, whatever we need to do with those. One of the things that managed metadata allows us to do is actually work with both taxonomy and folksonomy. So you may hear those terms thrown around and really try to understand what they mean. A taxonomy is that more formal, structured language. A lot of times we use that when we're talking about legal documents and the legal ways that our organizations are formed with departments and groups and teams and things like that. So we have very formal terms there. It may be the information technology department. But then there's also a folksonomy. That's that common language that we use. Hey, it's the IT department, right? So we want to make sure that we're understanding both of those. And managed metadata allows us to work with both of those using the very formal, structured data and also using the very informal, using those hashtags and those keywords. And the way that you're going to do that is using your term groups. And there's some settings that you have around those term groups. So your label will be your just describing what would be in your group. You may have a label of like HR or a label of products. So you're going to start describing what terms are going to go in those groups. It could be company or division. Out of the box with those that are already there, usually you create one that's like your company and then things below that. If you have multiple divisions and they're very large and they all want to manage taxonomies and you want to divide it further, you could do it by divisions. So within your company you may have multiple divisions and allow them to each be their own term group. And those are the people that are going to manage that taxonomy overall. And then also your contributors. These are people that are allowed to add data to the term set. You have several options there, whether users can be able to add it themselves or if you have somebody that needs to add it for them to those term sets. Once you create your term group, within those you'll create your term set. And so your term sets also have a set of settings. There's things like some information about it. I always recommend that you enter this information, who the stakeholders are, because there may be people that need to be aware of things that happen within that term set that don't necessarily want to go manage the day-to-day stuff, right? Especially like in HR. You may have somebody that's like an HRIS person that's going to go in and actually do the work and enter data for you and create those terms within that term set, but then maybe you have some HR stakeholders that need to just know when things are changing or need to be changed and updated. Typically, you can define the use of your term set. You can determine whether it's going to be for navigation or tagging. Tagging's a big one. Anybody use tagging in 2010? Yeah. Now we're moving in 2013 more to keywords. Everybody using keywords? The enterprise keywords. Okay, so we're moving more towards that. Tagging's still there, but we're not using it as much. But what we can do, there's a little checkbox that says available for tagging, and if you check that box, then those terms, they can be used. If you uncheck that box and somebody tries to use those terms, it just kind of disappears, right? And they never know that it's not actually being tagged with those keywords. Kind of an important thing I actually show, I think, in one of the demo videos that you'll see. Caveat, all my demos are video because I don't know if you were in my session yesterday, I told you that my whole mod tenant exploded. Lots of fun. When I tried to do the updates to it, and the mod team is actually working on that for me. So I'm glad I did record it so you actually can see stuff. And so I think I actually demonstrate, where you make something unavailable for tagging so that if they type it, it doesn't go anywhere. Typically I see that, hey, there's bad words we don't want people to use, right? For us, it's not the typical bad word, and you'll see that in the demo. That'll be a fun one for you. I hope you laugh and catch it. You can do sorting. So how are our terms going to be sorted? Will they be alphabetical? Will it be by as you enter them? Does it need to be in a specific order when people are looking through the term set and they're doing a lookup so that they know how to find what they're looking for? And then there's custom properties. So custom properties allows you to define further a search. And then you actually have terms, and the terms themselves have settings as well. Those can be marked as available or unavailable for tagging. What language it is, if you're using multiple languages. Anybody using multiple languages in their environment? A couple of people. So you can actually define that so that you can set up your languages and it will tag it and translate it with you. You have descriptions. I actually recommend this, especially if you have terms that are very similar in use. So if your users are trying to use something out of your managed metadata and they type it in, that little description is going to pop up to them so that they can tell the difference, right? So they can tell if it's, a widget versus something else that is maybe sounds similar or spelled similar, and which one they need to select. And then you also have your term default label, which is by default the actual term itself. And then other labels. These are kind of your synonyms, things that mean the same thing. If you were in my session yesterday, we talked about that, especially for things like state. We could actually create a term set of states, and we could use the 2-letter abbreviation in our term set, but then also type out the words of the states as the alternate, the other label, so that if they're doing a search and they type out something for Alabama, it knows to look for AL as well. So it helps our users to find what they're looking for there. And we also have navigation settings. This is what we're going to focus on a lot today, because we're going to use this in a lot of our demos. So it customizes that navigation. Instead of just being a hierarchical navigation on your site of, the content that you have in your site, maybe subsites, things like that. You can actually use the navigation of terms and locate and find your information, or present it in different ways. You can actually have pages that are specific for those things that are used in navigation. So if you were to have navigation across the top that says clothing and you click on clothing, it's actually going to have a clothing.aspx page that's going to display for you. It's going to generate it itself and put the content on there that you've told it to display, which is really kind of cool. And you'll see some of that in the demo as well. And then you also have refiners for faceted navigation. So faceted navigation is where you can filter and really define even further the content that's displayed on your page. For example, if we're using clothing as our navigation item still across the top, and we've clicked on clothing, we're on the clothing page. Maybe we have multiple types of clothing, shirts, shorts, pants, dresses, skirts, whatever. Those can be our faceted navigation display, only those things that are also tagged as that particular item. All right, and then of course, even on the terms themselves, we do have custom properties. Again, this is where you can define things further for search, so that you can go in and create those custom properties. Now that we understand kind of the structure of it and what we can do for each thing, we're also going to talk a little bit about management. So terms can be reused or pinned, and those two terms get confusing sometimes. So reusing a term means that you're going to take a term in one term set and also use it in another term set. So maybe you've got a department of product management, and then you also have product management where you're actually managing the product, right? So you can reuse those terms in product management as well as actually in where you're working with the products. So you could pin them in, or reuse them in both places. If you reuse it, you can actually go in to both places. So whoever's managing one term set or the other term set, even if it's not the same people, can go in and make changes to that term. They can go in and change the labels. They could go in and change some of the properties around navigation and things like that. Whereas if you pin something from one location to another, then only the people that originally owned that term can go in and make changes. The other department can use it to tag stuff within their organization, but it's not actually managed by them. It's still managed by the original term set. Does that make sense? All right. So we can also merge terms, and what that does is allow us to take terms that maybe mean the same thing and try to merge them down together. So it would say, like, if you had clothing and you wanted to merge all your clothing just into the general item of clothing rather than separating it out, because maybe we don't have as much anymore that we're managing, you could say, oh, let's merge them all into clothing, and it would go through and reset everything to be tagged as clothing rather than those individual items. Deprecated terms, these are terms that you can go in and tag as deprecated, which means that the term still stays in use where it's at, but users can no longer use that term or select that term either in the columns or use it for tagging or keywords, depending on what we've made it available for. And then we can also move them, so we can take them from one area to another. This happens a lot as growth happens. One of the demos that I show on the search actually is based off of an exercise company, an athletic company, and they had, here's our groups. We have, our yoga. Our yoga's gotten so big and so bulky in our organization that we need to move everything and give it its own term set. So we created a new one called yoga and started moving all of those terms under that, so that now it's got its own. Well, that's interesting. It's still up here. Let me check my settings. This could be fun. Yeah, Sarah, can you go grab me an AV guy? And we'll just pause here. Any questions so far? Anybody got any questions? All right. Yes. Mm-hmm. It manages it together still. So if you were to go into your term set where it's been reused and add a label, when you go to the other term set, it's going to show that other label in that place. So it's going to duplicate across both. Whereas if it's pinned, it's all grayed out on one and not on the other. So they can still manage it that way. The other thing that we can do is also delete. So you don't need to see that. We can also delete terms. Terms that are old, we may want to deprecate them first. I do highly recommend that you go in and deprecate the term first and then go in later and delete that term, because that's going to go through and remove that association from where it's being used in your content to the managed metadata term. Yeah, it just went blank. I don't know. Okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties, people. Yeah, I don't think I did anything. We're back? Okay. Thank you. Stay close. Yay. It just went off. I hadn't touched anything. All right. So next we're going to talk a little bit about managed metadata navigation. So there's a couple of ways that we can use managed metadata navigation. It starts at the site collection level, and that's you have to turn on the publishing features in order to use the managed metadata navigation. And then there's a couple of ways to use it. We can use it as our navigation across the top. We can use it in our lists and libraries, and then also in our sites, so as faceted navigation as well once we delve into those different pieces. I'm not actually going to show you configuring them all. I'll just kind of show you a couple of examples of it. Is that okay? That being said, we're actually going to move into our demo of term store management, and it is a video. So let me pull that up. Alright, so I'm showing you the Office 365 Admin Center. I'm actually doing this demo in Office 365, which you would go into your SharePoint settings, and for some reason I think I'm on the wrong one and I click Records Management. I'm not sure why, but I managed to realize I've clicked the wrong button and go to Term Store pretty quick. Alright, and you can see that we've created some different groups here. So I've got a yoga group, and I've got some term sets in my yoga group and terms underneath those. So you can see those. You can see the out-of-the-box ones, the people, the search dictionaries. I've got a product management division where we have our different types of products, and some of our terms actually have subterms as well. So you can see that. And we look at the settings here. We have our group name, who can contribute to it, our managers. If we disable the ability to contribute to it, that goes to false, so nobody can contribute. On our term, we have the same thing here if it's closed or open. What that does is when you go in and you're using your managed metadata column as a choice list, if it's not in there and you need to add something, you can click that other and type it in. If that's closed, then that doesn't appear. They can only select what's there. Here's our use, so we can determine if it's for tagging and navigation. Our sort order, usually we use the default according to language, but you can customize that. Our term-driven pages, that is part of the Managed Metadata Navigation, where we can set a term page, like clothing.aspx. And then here we go, where you would actually configure that, the title, the text, so if you hover over it, what's going to appear for those. And then whether or not it's going to be able to be shown in the navigation or global settings. And then I actually take you also to the site collection. So we can look in the site collection in your site settings, and you can do this also on-prem. So on-prem you would go to the same place. You can go to your term store management. I think I click it. Come on. Nope, maybe I don't click it. I just show you where it's at. All right. Other things that we can do, we can come in here and set up our divisions. So you can see my divisions, and you can see yoga is there as well. And again, it grew. So it started out as a term of its own. Then it also became a group, right? So we decided to do that. And here's where you can do that. You click that drop-down arrow, and it's going to show you your menu of items that you can do there for moving, copying, deprecating, retiring the term. I think, is this where I do it? I think I do. Yes, so I come in here. This is our bad word. You see it? Yeah. And we make it not available for tagging, so you can't tag anything with that word. Somebody tries to type it in, it just goes away. You're not allowed to talk about that word. It's got to be Bing. All right. So we come in here and we can create new terms. I think I create one. And we're going to actually create a new division of product or production management. And so we now actually have a division of production management. It's actually going to manage our bicycle line. So we have a line of bicycle items and clothing. And then we're going to pin our term. So you actually have to go to where you want it, and you say pin term with children. Then you're going to go through to the other location where it actually lives and select that. So if you pin the term with children, if it's got sub-terms like clothing does, it's actually going to put all of those terms in there. But they're all going to be as pins rather than reuse. Because if you're pinning them, then you don't want both people to be able to manage it. And in this case, we don't, because we want the actual production people to be using those terms and managing those, and not our actual division. So we're just going to have a division of production management, and in that division we can say, okay, they're clothing production management. So you can see how we reuse those terms. Any questions? Come back to the production here. And now we're going to talk a little bit about using managed metadata in libraries. So there's a couple of ways to do that. We'll create a document library. Of course, the most often used one is using managed metadata columns. This is where we can create columns within our libraries and have them look up data from managed metadata terms. A metadata column, as well as specific ones. We can create a new column like department and actually have it go look up from those departments, and they can browse down through that list and select rather than trying to type in something, maybe misspelling things. So we can use it that way. One of the new cool things is if you've tried to use managed metadata, especially in 2010, and use the quick edit, that little graph piece where you can just like copy and paste stuff, you couldn't really use managed metadata columns very well in quick edit mode because you had to go look them up each time. Now in 2013, we can actually use quick edit now, and you can copy and paste and whoop, take it all the way down, which I've done. In fact, when I built my catalog that you're going to see, I used that a lot so that I could just kind of copy and go down, okay, this is all bikes, this is all clothes, this is all this and that and the other, so that I could do that very fast. So it makes us able to do the bulk editing, even with managed metadata, much easier now. And then, of course, you can still let users enter their own terms if you're using the submission policy. The other thing we can do is turn on navigation within those libraries. So within each individual library, you can turn on metadata navigation. This existed also in 2010. It's a little bit better now in 2013. I think it works much better personally. But there's two ways to do it. You set the hierarchy that you're going to use, and then you can also set key filters. So the hierarchy is more like a folder structure. Those of us that are very familiar with everybody that wants to hold on to their folder shares, right? Everybody wants to hold on to their shared folders and have that same kind of structure where they click through and go all the way down, and then they select that folder and there's their data. The key filters actually allows us to select multiple of those. So rather than just being able to go through the hierarchy and down to the specific folder that we're looking for or the term set of data that we're looking for, then we can also say, okay, well, we want this term set and this term set, and you can select multiple and filter and get multiple answers there rather than just that one library or list, because it may exist in another location. And then you can also set up your indexing. This affects some of your list throttling. Anybody run into that where we've got more than 5,000 items in a list? Yeah, so we want to make sure that we set our indexing, and so that you can use it as an indexed column so that it knows that, hey, when I start querying on this, I'm not going to hit that 5,000 item limit, and your users get that ugly yellow bar at the top saying that they can't do it. All right, any questions about that really quick? I'm going to show you a little bit about how to do it. And we're going to do that now. And so this library is our library of yoga poses. So it's actually a picture library with a custom content type. The parent type is the picture content type, and we've created a custom one. For our hierarchy, we're going to say all of the fields that we want is going to be either the anatomical, the category, or the type. And then we also want those all available as our key filters. Now, you don't have to do both. You can do one or the other, or you can indices on this list so that we're not affecting that throttling. All right. So once we've turned that on for the library, we can see how it's going to work. We'll just go back into our library. And you can see on the left that this is our hierarchy. So this is like that folders that people are used to drilling down through and getting to what they want. So we're going to drill down. And you can only select one at a time, so you can't have multiples there. So it's going to bring up just that individual pose that fits that particular hierarchy. And then we can also do yoga type. If you want to see all the aerial, then you can see all of the aerial yoga. Same thing, drilling down like you're using folders. All right. But our key filters is going to allow us to do multiple things. So we've already selected our yoga type, so you can see that the key filters available now are only focus and category. If we had selected a different one, then the category and the type would be there, right? So it's going to change your key filters based on that. You can see I typed in two things. So we're in the aerial, and we want to focus on abs and arms. So you can see that it filters that list down. We actually created this as a demo for a company that was going through all of this so that they could use it to help plan their classes, their yoga classes and things like that, which I do. So that's where that comes from. There's my mouse. All right, any questions about that? Okay. Now we're going to move into how we're going to use all of that to help build a product catalog. Get my screen right over here. All right. So there's a couple of ways to do this. It's actually enabled through using a feature called cross-site publishing. It allows users in one site to create all of your content and manage that content, and users in another site to consume that content. It is available with a template if you're using on-prem. So you can go in and create your product catalog using that template. So new site collection, we're going to choose product template, and you go through and do it. We're actually going to build this one from scratch. I'm going to show you the site, and then I'm going to tell you how I built it. And I actually did this also in Office 365. Now there's a caveat here. Using cross-site publishing in Office 365, you can only publish to other internal site collections. You can't publish out to the anonymous-facing, public-facing website, because that's going away. But you can still use this to create like an internal catalog, maybe of, hey, here's all of the things that you can choose for their desk. So like a computer type, or so you can create your own internal product catalog and offering there as well, and then have them go and work from another site using that product catalog. In 2013 on-prem, you can actually do this, use cross-site publishing to publish it out to another web application that may be public-facing and actually anonymous, so more consumer, so they could actually go and shop through your site. So if you're using on-prem, you have that capability as well. All right, so I'm going to show you the product catalog first using the demo and the video here, and then I'm going to tell you how I built it, and we'll go through that. All right, so when you create your new product catalog, you get this beautiful site that says home, and you can customize it. You can say, hey, I'm the architect, and you can make it pretty. I'm the visual designer, and design that page. I'm not a visual designer, so it's pretty blank and basic. But I can come in here, and you can see I'm using navigation across the top, and I've got different things, accessories, bikes. You can go in and order these bikes and set them up. If you do clothing, there's a drop down there, so it actually shows the different types of clothing, and you can manage through that. So I can go to clothing itself, and then I can go down to just shirts or shorts and go even further and delve down through that. And do the same thing with components. You can click on it and see stuff. I did not create some really pretty pages, so I don't show you those pages because I'm not a visual designer. This is all just straight out of the box. So if you click on these items, you can actually go in and it would show you information. It's not a really pretty page on this one, so I'm not showing you that. But as a visual designer, you can actually go into those pages once you click on it and do things like setting up the ordering and things like that. Now that's all fed from another site. Here's the other site where we actually enter in all this data. And this is where I was loving the whole quick edit thing, because I could go in and just say, oop, these are all bikes, these are all shirts, these are all shorts, and things like that. So it was really nice to be able to do that. And here's my content types. It comes with a thing called product type and all of this stuff. If you're using the template, all of those content types are actually created for you, but I had to create these manually, and we'll go through and talk about how we did that. All right. And here's my list and settings on my list. So once you do that, there's a couple things you have to do, allowing management of content types and catalog settings to go in and say this is actually going to be published as a catalog to the other site so that it can actually browse those. And you can have multiple sites that are set up as catalogs, or actually lists that are set up as catalogs, so that you can actually create a catalog from multiple different types as well. All right. And that's where that disable anonymous access, if you enable or disable that, that would depend on whether you're using on-prem or Office 365, because Office 365 you can't use anonymous access. But on-prem you can still do anonymous access and say, hey, I'm publishing this to a site off that doesn't have the same security, and set that up. I can't remember what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm showing if you hover over it what it's going to show you. You can set all of that up in the site itself. All right. So pretty cool, huh? right? Being able to create a catalog that looks like that. Really easy. I am not a designer, and it looks okay, but it's not like pretty what you'd want to go shopping on the internet. But you can do that very easily if you've got a good designer handy. All right. So now we're going to talk about how we did it. Ooh, didn't mean to skip that. So the first thing you have to do is actually create the product management site collection. This can be a team site. You have to activate a few site collection features. You have to activate cross-site publishing, the publishing infrastructure, and then at the site level you have to activate Managed Metadata Navigation and Filtering, deactivate the minimal download strategy. That's where it has that underscore catalog, start, pound, something, and then it finishes your URL there. You have to actually deactivate that on the site where you're managing your data, right? And then you have to turn on the publishing feature as well on the site feature. So both at the site collection and the site level, you have to turn those features on. Once you do that, you can set up your managed metadata hierarchy. You can actually do that from the site collection itself, going to term store management and start to create those terms. Create yourself a term group and term sets for each column that you want to use. And then start adding in your terms. And you can do that through that term store management. If you have all this maybe in a CSV file and you work with your admin, if you don't have server access, they can actually import that into a term set as well. So if you've already got some kind of other place where you have them export it out in a specific format and they can import it for you, saving you a lot of manual typing. Otherwise, you can hire an intern. They're really good for typing. I know this. And then you can make those sets available for navigation. They have to be made available for navigation in order to be able to create the catalog. Once you do that, then you're going to create your content types. So of course the parent content type is going to be item. And then you're going to add your metadata columns to that. We created one called product. That's just an item content type. We've got a title. The item number, so if you're working with a catalog where people order it, that item number becomes important. A roll-up image, that's actually an out-of-the-box site column that comes on when you turn on publishing. So you can use that roll-up image site column, and that's what gave us those pictures. Then you can have your product type, that's a managed metadata, color, size, and then of course your price. If you're selling things, that's always fun, right? You don't have to have all of those columns. If there's a limited number that you need, you can do that as well. You can actually select further down. You don't necessarily have to have price or maybe some of those other things as well. All right. Once you've created that content type, then you're going to go through and create yourself a list based on that content type. So you're going to go in and create a custom list, set the content type to your new content type, and then you have to turn on content approval and versioning, and then begin to add your content. You can, I did mine using the quick edit stuff, and I added everything except for the roll-up image. Then I went back in and made the roll-up image required after that, because it wouldn't let me do it without it. And then went to each one and added the roll-up image after that, because it was just such a pain to try to do that in a quick edit. But that allowed me to get like the product name in there and all of that data in there first, and then go add the roll-up image after. And then you have to go in where I showed you the catalog settings and turn it on as a catalog. And then you can set it to say, okay, is it going to an anonymous site or not an anonymous site? But all that does is tell your farm that says, hey, I'm a catalog if anybody wants to use me. So you haven't created the actual catalog yet. This is just a list of data that can be consumed as a catalog, okay? Really important thing to remember about content approval and versioning, because I'm going to show you where that bites you, because I got bit by that once, and it was really kind of funny. So just remember that if you've turned that on, there's some important pieces you have to do there. So when you go into your catalog itself, you can turn on specific things. So when you're creating your catalog, to the last time it was indexed, which is really cool. So when you click on your catalog settings, it says, hey, I've been indexed or I haven't been indexed. It's all really kind of based on search in the background. If it's not indexed, it's not going to show up. If it's been indexed and stuff is not showing up, there's a pretty important reason why. You can tell it to go ahead and re-index that list. That'll take you to the advanced settings page, especially in Office 365, and you can request it. So in Office 365, you don't have control over how often search runs. If you're not in Office 365, you can still click this button, and then you can call up your admin and say, hey, can you crawl this site again? And they can go in and force a crawl and get that information. Disabling or enabling anonymous access, big important piece like we talked about. And then which URL fields will be used for the catalog. You can select specific ones or not specific ones. And then you can select your navigation hierarchy. So for my catalog, I'm actually using the item number and ID as my selection field. So that if they want to order, they're going to use by the item number and ID. And the navigation is going to be on a type of product. Remember, we looked in, we saw accessories and clothing and the different types of products. That's going to determine what that top navigation is. Again, you can make that pretty. You can bring it down to where it's over it using a lot of CSS, things like that, if you've got a designer that can help you with that. So once you've set all of this up on the catalog itself, which is the list of data that you're going to work from that people can manage, then you actually create your catalog site collection. Now this also has to be a publishing site collection. When you go into site settings, there's a setting called Manage Catalog Collections. And when you click on that, if you've got lots of lists that have been said, hey, I'm going to be a catalog and they're hanging out there just waiting for somebody to pick me, then you will see all of those there. So once you see that, you can select that particular catalog. So you can actually have multiple, and you can say, hey, I want to connect to a bunch of different catalogs and put them all together as one. And you can actually do that as well. So I could have created a different catalog for accessories and a different one for clothing and a different one for the bikes themselves, and then put it all back together, though, with that Managed Metadata Navigation using the product type, because I'm going to use the same product type across all libraries. So it would still work if I had multiple libraries published as a catalog and pull them in to the same single site collection on the front end, and it would still merge my clothing and my accessories and my bikes all there, and I'd still have the navigation at the top. Make sense? This means yes. All right. Then once you connect to your catalog, you get the catalog settings page. And once you get the catalog settings page, you can choose your navigation and your hierarchy and your URL structure for the site. You know, are you going to have clothing.aspx, accessories.aspx? How are we going to manage that? So you have the ability to go in and set that up as well. All right, and then you're going to want to go in and make sure that you've got managed metadata for your navigation. So in the site settings, go to your navigation settings and make sure that it's enabled, make sure that it's working correctly. Make sure it's showing that site navigation there. If it's not showing that, then it didn't pull it all in correctly. So something's been missed somewhere. So you may need to go and adjust your navigation settings either on the catalog itself or in the catalog settings where you can manage your own navigation pieces. Okay. There's a setting called Advanced. So once you go into the Advanced, you can customize the look and feel. This is where you can get your designers involved, and they can make it look really, really pretty for you. They can give you the top navigation. They can give you page layouts for those really pretty pages when you click on the item in your catalog so that it looks pretty. It shows the image on the left side and puts everything where you want it to make it look like a really professional catalog. They can create display templates for this as well. So when you're searching through it, it's going to display a specific way. They can customize that page that just shows all the items. So instead of having, you know, the name under it in the image, they can change it to the image to the left and all of the description to the right. So you can really customize the way your catalog looks to your end users. And then, of course, they can actually go in and say, here's where our refiners are going to be. They can define which ones you're going to use over there. And, you know, if you click on a refiner, what it's going to do to your page, how it's going to change it. All right. So that's how I created that catalog. Anybody got any questions about that? Anybody using a catalog? Yes? Oh, you're using one? For what? If you don't mind my asking. Oh, for knowledge base. That's cool. That's a cool way to do it. You have a knowledge base, and then you say create this as a catalog, and then you've got it somewhere else where they can consume it. That's a pretty cool reason to do it too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be products, so you can use a catalog for anything. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how we can do a catalog on our own with search. Now, this doesn't require publishing of any kind. We're actually just going to use search, and we're going to use our content types that we've created so you can build a catalog-like experience. So it wouldn't be something where you'd go through and select and order and necessarily do all of those things, but allow you to be able to find your data and view it as if it were a catalog and find the information you're looking for or build the information on that. Again, it doesn't require publishing, and content approval is optional. I have a caveat under there that says, remember, not approved content will not be found via search. So funny story. I was building this out and working on all my demos, and I had my catalog built, and I'm doing it in Office 365, and I know necessarily things don't happen when I want it to, so I'm waiting, and and I keep going to my published catalog and going, why isn't data showing up here? I don't understand. And then I'd go back to my catalog, and I'd click on the settings, and it would say, hey, I've been indexed and no errors. And I'm like, but there's nothing here. What's going on? And a good friend of mine, Neil Hodgkinson, works for Microsoft on the Office 365 team. He's on the CAT team. So they do a lot of work with search and publishing and everything with Office 365, as well as on-prem search, and even working with Azure and how that all fits and the hybrid stuff. And so I was like, hey, Neil, I'm having this weird issue. I don't know if I need to contact support. I've requested a reindex of the site. It's crawling content, or it says it's crawling my content, but it's not showing up in my catalog. What is going on? I can't even do a search for it just by terms and find the data. He's like, really? That sounds odd. And so he's like trying to troubleshoot with me, and I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. And then I realize content approval is on. And I haven't gone in and approved any of my products that I had created, because I'd done it all in the bulk edit. And so I'd done all the bulk edit, and I'd done all the editing, adding in the pictures, and I forgot to go back and take it off of draft and publish it and approve it. So I had to go through and do that. Once I did that for all of my items, guess what? I had a catalog. So if you turn on content approval, remember that you've got to go and actually approve content in there. Hopefully you've got it set up where it's actually a workflow and it's not a one-person operation like me. But just definitely remember that. It won't be found via search if it's not approved. All right? So here's how we're going to build a search catalog using the very basic information, right? So we're going to create a site collection, add a content by search web part, or you can add more than one if you want. You can have multiples of those. And then build your query based on your content type. So when you use the content by search web part, you get this option for how to build your query. And you get refiners and settings. It's going to show for you. So you can set that up and do that. And this is a very basic thing. I'm going to actually demo this for you. It works pretty well. But you can actually even take this and go even more advanced with it. I'm going to talk about that after. But first, I'm going to show you a little bit about how I created the very basic search catalog. All right, so we're back on our yoga site collection, and here's all my poses. And when I go into my yoga pose, I can just type. I actually have two content query or content search web parts on there. One is the actual poses that are pictures, and the other is the documentation about it. That would be like, what it's good for, poses leading into it, out of it, all of that documentation that's around it. I can do searches based on keywords. I can do searches based not on keywords, though, even. So rather than just having and being very limited to the navigation at the top or those refiners, I can just free-form text what I want to put in there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the full name of the pose or even the type of pose or anything like that. So you can see that we can use that to create a catalog-like experience. So if you're trying to get information and give it to your users quickly, if they were building a class and they wanted to find information and build that class from here, they could do the search, pull up the information, print it out, take screenshots, whatever they want to do, just kind of know, okay, these are the poses that I need to use in my yoga class if I'm building it. And they can do that to build that. If they're looking for a specific one, they can actually type in the name, see both pieces of the documentation, click on it, open it up, and really read about it and research it. All right, so I'm just going through and showing you how it works. Rather than navigation through, you're just typing in words. And if you've set up your search queries and things like that in your dictionaries to be the right thing, if they misspell it, it would correct it for them and say, did you mean? And bring up the right terms for them. And this is how I built it. So you can see it's based on 2 content search web parts and then a search bar. And I've just connected the search bar to those queries. And when I come in here, I'm using my current site. You can change that. So if you've got multiple sites that are working on things and they're all using the same content type, you can change that. And I'm using my content types. If your custom content type does not show when you first click that drop down, there's a little button that's going to say more content types or custom content types. You click that and then it'll expand out and show you all of your content types, not just the basic ones that are there. So if you don't see it, don't freak out. Just make sure that you look for that. Show me more. And you can create those. And then you have to edit your search web part and connect it to which ones you're going to connect it to. So you can actually have multiple or single. If you have multiple search web parts on the page, you can connect them to specific ones. So you can have one search doing one content type and one search doing another content type. Just be sure that you educate your users, give them instructions on the screen about it. So you can see there's, like I said, you don't have to type in full terms. It will actually do the full text search, whereas the catalog itself will only do the navigation using the managed metadata. Now you still have the ability, if you leave search available to them, they can search through your catalogs using that same thing as well. It just wouldn't necessarily show quite like that. Any questions? Now I'm going to show you how we built that. All right, so when you're building your search catalog, the first thing you're going to do is add your search box web part and configure it to send to those things. And like I said, you can search using any terms. If you really want to get advanced with it and make it dynamic, you can have some custom display templates for each of your content types. So you'd have a designer come in, maybe just create some of those custom display templates so that when you're doing your search, it would show up in a special way. I'm just using the out of the box with the roll-up image on the left and the title underneath, but you could have them really change that display template and apply it to those content by search web parts. All right, and hey, look, I have managed to breeze through this in an hour. I know I went really, really fast. There's some resources for you on how to build a catalog, a couple of links there. I think y'all get copies of the slides. So if you've got a copy of the slide deck, those resources are available to you. Some information about managed metadata and content types there as well. And I will open it up for some Q&A if anybody has any questions. Don't be shy. Nobody has any questions? I don't think they're actually with the slides, but they're recording everything. They're recording everything that's on the screen as well as my voice, and I think IT Unity is going to be publishing that at some point. And I'm not sure if they're doing it just to the attendees or if they're going to publish it publicly. So kind of watch for that. I'm sure that the conference will send out a notice letting you know it's available. And they didn't do it for everybody, just certain ones. I think they said, hey, this sounds really good, and let's do this. And so I know that mine will be out there at some point. So just watch for that. And if it's not out there and you want to see any of that, just shoot me an email. I'll be glad to package things up, send it to you, something like that. Any other questions? All right, you got 10 minutes early. Go. I'm going to go catch a flight. catch a flight.